Hey Ocean Crew, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Karen and I'm from Ocean Chicks Films. Tonight, I'm going to take a deep dive into the scariest movie of all time, The Exorcist from 1973. This one's directed by William Friedkin. I'm a huge fan. And the story is written by William Peter Blatty. A few weeks ago, I did a review of The Exorcist 3, so now this is kind of a continuation of that. I want to take more of a look at the whole franchise. These films are about the mystery of faith and the battle between good and evil. There's a big debate going on between whether the first one or the third one is the better of the two films, but I think they're both equally as amazing. Just so you know, there will be spoilers, so if that's not cool with you, just click off now and we'll catch you on the next one. But if it's cool with you, then stick around and enjoy the show. When The Exorcist opened in 1973, it had huge audiences, big lineups, and the people in the theaters were fainting and getting physically ill and running screaming from their seats.
It just scared me to death. Things just like this
That's how scary it was. And the popularity grew from it, and nobody knew the success that was to come. Now, the director, William Friedkin, used severe, unorthodox methods to create this film, and I think that's why he got this reaction from it. Now, Peter Blatty wrote mostly about comedy before this happened, but he needed something new to write about. And while he was in one of his religion classes at school, they were talking about this crazy story. In 1949, that this 14-year-old boy living in Maryland was actually deemed possessed by the devil and granted an exorcism, and it was a really big case. Fortunately, he recovered from it, and then he went on to work for NASA, if you can believe it, but he did. So the church itself kept this whole story very private so that the young man could lead a normal life and go on. They didn't talk about it. So it was really difficult to dig up information about it, but he was so fascinated by the subject matter that he just had to, and he knew he had something there to write a story about. He had to make it sort of a fictitious story, so he changed it up a little bit. He turned it into a 12-year-old girl and her mom instead, because I think he had a friend or somebody that he knew that had a daughter that was 12. Super effective anyway, maybe even more so effective than if it had been a boy in the story. So he wrote the story and the screenplay and he pitched it to studios, and none of them wanted it. It was rejected by all of them. So he connected with who he thought would be a great idea, an agnostic director, right? Someone who was impartial to the whole thing, not believing, not disbelieving. And he connected with William Friedkin to do it. And wow, that was just chemistry. I wonder if they got that sort of creative feeling and just knew that this was going to be huge. Blatty and Friedkin worked together with some priests to make this film come together and happen. So they both decided to take a more documentary style approach to the film because they knew it would be much more believable that way. And Freakin seemed to really focus on sound, the sound of the film, not overpowering anything, but being very chilling. Freakin was very inspired by the painting Empire of Light, and so that was his focus, that sort of a feel. And he added in, 70s decor with like a middle-class family that was very normal. So it really drew you into it because it's like this kind of a story is not something that happens to those kinds of people. So that made it even creepier. So with the painting aspect of it, he did things in terms of darks and lights, good and evil. Now, the beginning of the film, we are in Iraq, and they actually went there and they filmed the workers there. And all of the natural sounds that were happening there, Friedkin really loved. And he knew that had to be part of the film to give it that realism. And he wanted a musical score that enhanced that and didn't overpower it. He didn't want something big and grand and loud that would dictate how you feel. He wanted you to experience it yourself. He didn't want it to be like a modern day slasher film where the music's really pronounced and loud and you kind of hear the killer coming up against the person with a knife ready to stab them. He didn't want that. He wanted something more subtle and quiet to really amp up that creepy feeling. When I watch this movie, it totally flashes me back to when I was a kid. I can feel myself in my living room in the evening and it's kind of quieter and you're just watching the television, it was so different back then than it is today with all of our electronics and our sound and noise and lights, bright lights and everything. I mean, my parents' living room was gold. Everything was like rusty colors and golds and browns and wood. So it was very dark in the evening because people wanted to cozy up and watch some television or read a book. Not like it is today where we have this really bright lights and lots of sound coming from different electronics and things like that. And so this movie really flashes me to that, and it's really creepy. I think that really adds an element of real creepiness to it. So to him, he thought it has to be something like Brahms' Lullaby. And he had some very modern classical musicians that were very big back then, and he got them to write some music for him. But he just thought, no, this is all wrong. He ended up firing 2 people, and one of them was a really good friend of his that ended that friendship. That guy never spoke to him again because of it, because he put all the work into it and then he trashed it. And he ended up digging through some old library, I think, files, found this piece that was unknown that had a little bit of music at the beginning that was like that, but then dialogue. So he ended up using the first 50 seconds of that, and that's the music that you hear throughout. Like, I especially can notice it when, you know, the mom is walking from her protest, I think, or work home, and they have that piano music playing. Really creepy, really effective. I think he was so smart doing it that way. The film has constant tension throughout. It never stops. You don't get a rest. And Friedkin's an editor too, and he edited everything slowly rather than choppy and fast. So you're not getting all of those jump scares. You're in it and you're watching it and you're sliding through it and you have no choice. Find that so creepy too. This movie is the epitome of practical effects, all practical. No CGI, no computers, no nothing. And it's awesome because they use some so creative ways of getting the shots. So even they had like a rig and a chair tied to it, and someone would sit in that holding the camera, and that's how they would get the motion. Incredible, absolutely incredible, crazy but incredible. I can imagine the set people and the actors and stuff just, you know, wanting to kill him at the end of the day sometimes. But I mean, I don't think there's anything else like that ever been made since. Like, it's just so incredible. And like I say, CGI sucks most of the time. Sometimes it enhances things and sometimes it's not too bad. But this old school stuff, that's the way to go all the time. Like that scene, the infamous scene of the spider walk where Regan's walking backwards down the staircase. That scene was cut from the original theatrical release because the girl who was a stunt double named Ann Miles, she had to be rigged up with wires, and because they were doing it with practical effects and not CGI, they couldn't erase the wires out of the shot, so you saw that as she was going down, so he had to cut that scene. Years later, when it was re-released, the original version, they had that scene in because they were able to wipe out those cables because they had computers then. But even so, such a crazy, scary scene. I remember seeing that one in theaters and freaking out because it was just so horrifying. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the demon voices, because I think that's a really cool part of the film. And Friedkin knew he was going to have to combine a bunch of elements together to get a really scary sound. So he immediately thought of this stage and screen actress that he knew named Mercedes McCambridge. She had this great voice, and he thought, I'm going to get her. So she agreed to come and do it. And she said, here's the thing. You're going to sit me in a chair, tie my hands behind my back, and you're going to feed me raw eggs. I'm going to drink Jack Daniels, and she's a recovering alcoholic, so she actually went off the wagon to film this, and smoke tons of cigarettes to get prepared so that, you know, I can do this with my voice. So she did. Every session, she would smoke 2-3 packs of cigarettes, she would drink the alcohol, and she would eat raw eggs. And she'd get to a point where her voice was really raspy and crazy, and she would read the lines or read the words, whatever it took. He took those recordings, and he was actually fortunate enough to get an actual tape of an exorcism from the Vatican. It was performed in the basement of the Vatican, apparently, because he had these priests working with him. He was able to get that. So he combined those two things, as well as some tapes from a slaughterhouse of pigs being killed, and he put all of that together and, you know, came out with this incredible sound. So scary. I mean, how many of you can listen to that and still get a little bit freaked out? Come on. It's pretty scary stuff. And there were also a few parts that have some really sharp sounds he wanted just for effect. Like there's a scene where Regan has in her stomach, I think, the words are being sort of pulled out, like it says, help me, that kind of thing. And he wanted something really shrieking for that. So the sound that he used was bees, because he felt that sound is something that really freaks people out. So they had bees close to the microphone buzzing, amped that up and added different segments together to give it that kind of effect of, you know, you getting chills down your spine kind of thing. I thought that was really cool too. I've heard of people doing that though in other movies as well, but it's a scary sound. Another fun fact is when they had Regan's head turning around, when she spits the pea soup out, turning around, they just had a wallet full of credit cards and they crinkled it. That's how they have that sound. That itself was a mechanical device put together with a mold of Linda Blair's head, you know, to give it that look so that they could do that. And then also the pea soup thing was a machine that shot out this pea soup. And the one cut that they actually used was the one that screwed up a little bit. So they were getting, I guess, tired in doing it so many times. It's freezing cold in this room. They hit it so hard. It hit Jason Miller in the face so hard. He was pissed off and he's like wiping it away. And that's the cut that they used for the shot. So I thought that was really neat too. Now the actors, to get them in the mood for their roles, he had them all ready to go. They'd all rehearsed. They put it together. But everything seemed really stale, stagnant, boring, staged. And he thought, this is going to be a disaster. They were all doing everything the way they were supposed to do it. But there was something missing from it. So what he did was he took the actors one by one before their scene. And he knew what they were all about. He knew they needed to improvise the lines slightly to bring their own personalities into them. So he would put them together, like say, for example, Linda Blair, put her in a room and said to her, you have to be sad. So what's something sad that happened to you in your short little lifetime so far? Because she was 12 at the time. And she said, well, when my grandfather died. So he got her talking about that, got her into that frame of mind, and then said, okay, go. Film the scene. And she filmed it, and that was much more effective. The actors, the cast was absolutely incredible in this film. It's so sad that like so many of them have passed away, and I will never get to meet them. Not that I would have, but it would have been cool if I could have. Very sad that they passed away. So incredible, really incredible. I know there was a lot of bad stuff that was in this film because it was so intense and they were pushed to the limits, but it still must have been a really incredible experience. Now, because of all of the practical effects and the way they were rigging things up and pushing things to the limit, of course, there were some very unfortunate injuries. Linda Blair, who played Regan, she actually fractured her back during filming the scene where she's in the bed. She's strapped to like a leather harness, and it was used to flail her around, and I guess one of the buckles came undone and it flailed her a bit too hard. And so she didn't break character, but when she was screaming for her mother, it was genuine because she was in so much pain. So that really sucks. There was also a part where Ellen Burstyn had to be shoved backwards. So someone from the crew shoved her. And she kept saying, you're shoving me too hard. I'm going to get hurt. And they did it anyways and pushed her, and she ended up bruising her back or something to that effect. And she was okay, but still a little bit too excessive. I don't think that kind of thing would happen nowadays. But back then, yeah, it did. I mean, it's sad because it was a really incredible film. And I know Ellen Burstyn is supposed to be doing this remake of The Exorcist coming out in the next year or so. So I guess yeah, I guess she got over it, and she's realizing it was a work of art, and it's worth kind of delving into again. But yeah, very unfortunate. Another extreme thing they had to go through was work in very, very cold temperatures. So there are scenes in the middle of the film that you can see their breath, and you can actually see their breath. And I feel for them, because I grew up in a very cold northwestern town in the winter, and boy, that must have been pretty harsh to go through hours of filming and acting and working in that cold. So how he achieved this was the bedroom was a set. Kind of disappointed in that, because you can't see it, it was just a set design. But they brought in these massive, huge air conditioners, like 4 of them, and they kept them running and let them go overnight, to the point where it got down to like -30, -40 degrees. I can't even imagine. And your breath coming out, oh man, that would be harsh. I'm not super happy about the cold. I just can't take it that well. I prefer warm, but oh my gosh, I really give them credit for doing that. And they also had 2 priests on the film that acted in the film as well. One had a tiny part. His name was Thomas Birmingham, and he was a Jesuit priest and teacher. So he was in there, and he was kind of educating them and helping them with stuff, as well as having a little bit part. He played Tom in the movie. And there was also Father Dyer, and Father Dyer was played by William O'Malley. And he played, obviously, a very big role. He was friends with Father Karras, and was devastated when he died at the end. I thought this was really cool, and what I liked about it was they talked about the fact that back in the day when this first came out and they were doing stuff about the church, I remember learning that it was a bad thing to do these kinds of films. The church was against it because it promoted the devil. But the priests in this actually talked about the fact that it was a good thing to do these kinds of films because it exposes the devil, and the devil doesn't like that very much. So that being said, apparently, and I don't know if this is just publicity or what, but they had weird stuff happen during the filming that was unexplained. Like, for example, one of the sets burned to the ground, completely to the ground. It put them out for days or weeks before they could get things rolling again. Absolutely incredible. They also had, amongst the whole cast and crew, there were 9 deaths connected to the cast and crew. Not the members themselves, but people, family members, friends, associated with the cast and crew. So I thought that was really crazy too. I mean, it could be all a publicity stunt, the whole idea of it being kind of spookier, but kind of weird. So to make this film creepy, they had used a sort of misty, grainy kind of filter on the film. They had very little sound, so that was kept down. They had more natural sounds coming out, nothing boisterous as far as the score went. They had really nice, normal people that this happened to. They also filmed the beginning scene in Iraq. That all added to the ambiance of the film. And that staircase, that really, really tall, steep staircase that actually exists, I would love to go see one day. The one where Father Karras tumbles down to his death. And I find it neat that that staircase is still there, and apparently it connected the 2 streets together from one street to the other way back in the day. And the football field, the track that Father Karras was running around, and the I don't know if it's City Hall or something like that, or it might have been the school, the university, where the mom was, doing her protesting and speech and that kind of thing. All of those places are still there. Changed just a little bit here and there, but they're all still there. So I think it'd be really cool to do a tour and go see those places. So there are 2 cuts to this movie, the theatrical, which I don't think I ever saw in theaters because I was way too freaked out and young to watch it in theaters back in the day. It took me a lot of years to build up to watch it, even talk about it now. And then there's the original cut, which was deemed the director's cut by studios, but it's not really. It's the original cut. It's the version you've never seen before, where Freakin actually put back a couple of the scenes that he had cut from the original one that kind of caused a rift between him and Blatty, because Blatty felt those scenes were so important. One of the scenes is the spider crawl, and like I said before, they couldn't do it because of the wires. They couldn't blur those out, so that was cut. That was added back in the original. And also there's a scene where the two fathers are sitting, taking a break outside of Regan's room, and they're discussing the whole thing. And Father Karras is wondering why on earth this is happening to this little girl. And the exorcist explains that it's not happening to the little girl. It's a way to attack all of us and, you know, downplay us and make us feel inferior, like, you know, God's abandoned us, that kind of thing. He felt that scene was unnecessary and cut it in the first place because the whole film is about that and it's so obvious. He felt it was too redundant to say it, have that conversation, so he cut it. But to Blatty, he thought it was so important and crucial to the whole storyline. There's also a scene at the end that he cut to where the lieutenant and the Father Dyer together hook up and talk about going to the movies together and kind of sharing a moment. And then, of course, we know that relationship that develops there over the death of their friend, Father Karras. They, you know, in the third film, they get together and they spend a lot of time together going to the movies and having dinners and chit-chatting and that kind of thing. So I think all those three scenes are important, and I'm really glad that they included it in the original version. And what's really cool is Freakin was happy because him and Blatty, he loved him. They were really good friends, and he was so happy he could create that version and put it out there. And it happened before he died, so he got to see it. But regardless of the scenes being in there or cut, really doesn't matter because the original film, the theatrical cut, it did so well. It was so successful. I mean, it cost like $10 million to make, and it brought in over $400 million. So, I mean, come on. Successful anyway. There was a lot of stunt work in this film. You got to give credit to those people too. CGI has really changed that for people, but wow, some of the stuff that they did for this film, crazy. So the scene where Father Karras, he gets it even inside of him and he jumps out the window to kill himself to stop the whole thing and falls down the staircase, that long, narrow staircase. That was a stuntman, and so what they had to do was rig the steps up with rubber, like cover the whole entire thing with rubber, keep it looking still like stairs. And a guy did one take and he literally jumped out the window and tumbled down the stairs. You could not pay me enough to do that. I don't care what the film was or who the director was. I would not do that. But wow, kudos to him for doing it. Wow. So the poster art, which is something I'm really interested in. The original thing was a sketch that they sent to Freakin, and it was of a girl holding a bloody cross, and it said, "God help her." And he immediately said, "No way. You can't have God in a poster for a movie advertising the movie. That's not going to go over." And back then it wouldn't have. Maybe today it would have. I don't know. And you can't have the most disturbing scene in the movie right on the front cover. I mean, it's not going to wash very well. So no, we can't do that. So he said, "I'm thinking more on the lines of a Magritte painting, you know, kind of a surrealist look," which I absolutely love. I didn't know that. And surrealism is my favorite form of art. I love Dali, one of my favorite artists. And so they had that silhouette of the house with Father Marin standing there, you know, walking towards the house. I mean, that's such an iconic look. Such a good call. That's one of the posters for a movie that I absolutely love, even to this day. And such an incredible cast to this film. I can't say enough good stuff. Linda Blair, as a child, with such heavy topics and acting them out so beautifully. Absolutely incredible, very creepy. And Ellen Burstyn as the mom, she was perfect. They passed up a lot of big names too that didn't work out. Audrey Hepburn, Shirley MacLaine, Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda told them to, no, yeah, because she was going through one of those phases when she was doing the war stuff. I think that's really funny. I heard an interview with Freakin talking about that and it made me giggle. But yeah, I wonder if she's kicking herself now that she didn't do the part. I don't know. Maybe not. And but Ellen was absolutely phenomenal in this. She's such a lovable kind of character. She seems like a mom, but she seems very hip and cool. And yeah, her reactions and stuff in the film were just amazing. And Jason Miller as Father Karras, Father Damien. couldn't have gone to a better person, and apparently this was his film debut too. He did such a good job. I was so surprised recently to learn that that's Jason Patric's dad. No wonder I like the two of them so much. Every time I think of a priest in a role in a film, I always think of Jason Miller, because I think he was the best, absolutely. It's unfortunate he's passed as well, because he would have been a cool person to meet and talk to. And Max von Sydow, who played Father Marin, he was incredible too, and I didn't realize he was actually quite young back then, so they had to do makeup and stuff to make him look older. I didn't know that. They did such a good job. And Father Dyer, Lieutenant Kinderman, they were really incredible too. They were not used in number 3 because for the father wasn't. I don't really know why. I'll have to look into that for another episode. But I believe Bill Cobbs died before the 3rd film, so they had to replace them. But I think they did a good job replacing them too. It worked. And all of the friends, the whole cast was really incredible. There was a real chemistry there. And it won Academy Awards and nominated for a whole pile of Academy Awards. So it did really well. That never happened in horror. I remember back in the day, yeah, horror just wasn't even looked at for the award shows at all, which is crazy to me because that was always my favorite type of film to watch. But so this was pretty groundbreaking. And William Friedkin, man, the guy's talented. He said it was the most challenging movie he's ever made, but his creativity was so extraordinary that it really showed, and it made for a really scary film and a great film. I've watched it over the years, the decades, watched it again and again and again, and it never gets old. It's never bad. You never look at it and go, oh man, that's so stupid and so hokey. It's chilling. It's horrifying. They don't make movies like that anymore. Some of the scariest scenes for me, I would have to choose that spider walk thing, hands down, but it wasn't in the theatrical cut, so maybe can't really say that one. The scene where Regan's in her pajamas and they're having the party downstairs, and she comes downstairs and she says, you're gonna die, or you're all gonna die, and she pees herself. That's so scary to me because I remember, being a kid back in the 70s, and the house is really dark and warm, and mom and dad are having people over, and hey, maybe you're not feeling that well, so you're in your pajamas really early, and you're kind of maybe have a bit of a fever, so you're a little bit loopy, a little bit out of it. So seeing that, just I could so connect with, not that I peed myself, but that I could just identify with that kind of a scene and being in that moment and it being so scary for me. Another scene that really freaked me out is the one where Father Marin dies in the middle of the exorcism, and Father Karras has taken a break, and he comes back in and he sees it, and he sees Regan there, and she's just in awe of what she's accomplished at that moment. That is so scary to me every time I have to look away because it's just so freaky, really terrifying. And also the scene where she's running around and she has that like snake or lizard tongue popping out of her, and she's chasing the maid, the housekeeper. So freaky because it reminds me of, when you're a kid and you would do things like you're gonna lick the person and then they would hold your head back. If you're trying to lick them, that's what that reminds me of, and that freaks me out. Chasing, or someone chasing you around to tickle you or something like that. Ugh, gives me the heebie-jeebies. And my favorite line is when Regan says, "What an excellent day for an exorcism." Oh, that's so creepy with the gnarly voice and stuff. So scary. All right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up because, man, I could talk and talk and talk and talk. There's even more. I'm going to have to do another episode for sure because there's more stuff. But let me know in the comments section what your favorite parts were in the film. What scared you the most? How did you react to it? When did you see it? Do you watch it all the time? Do you love it? Do you hate it? All of those things. Do you think that Friedkin's, methods for directing this film were too extreme? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you also think about the remake that's coming up? Or I don't know if it's a remake or a reboot. I'm not sure. I know that the mom is coming back and she's continuing on with the same character, so I'm not really sure how that's going to work. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear. And if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up because it helps me a lot. And subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, deep dives like this. More Spirits and Screams on Saturday nights. We got lots more of those coming up. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you guys came and watched and hung out, and I really love to chat with you. And I just want you to have a great weekend, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.